The content discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or mortgage advice. Always consult with a licensed professional before making any decisions regarding mortgages or financial matters.
Welcome to the Canadian Mortgage Show. Here are mortgage professionals Alex Pang and Alex Shanks to cut through the BS and educate Canadians on all things mortgages and real estate.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Mortgage Show. This is episode 26. Alex Pang here alongside with my co-host Alex Shanks. Alex, we're not doing too well now, are we?
No, I'm doing better today. This is feeling good. If this was yesterday, the day before, I'm sorry, guys, everyone. Me and Alex probably wouldn't be doing the podcast. Both of our families have been fighting this nasty plague going around.
Yeah, in sports they say you're playing injured. We're playing injured, and the show must go on. Yeah, I've been feeling under the weather myself this week. Maybe not as much as Alex. Alex, you said that off air, you were saying that you were in the hospital earlier this week, right? What happened?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did go there just because I'd been sick previously, like 2.5 weeks ago. I think we probably talked about it on another podcast, and got the same thing, really bad fever, the shakes. I threw up, just a horrible cough. And I know there's a lot of pneumonia going around. So I'm like, yeah, I should make sure that this isn't something worse. And yeah, nothing bad, x-rays, blood work, everything was good that way.
All right. Good to hear. Good to hear. You're not 100%, but glad you're here to join us. Yeah. So this week, both my kids were sick, and then I start to feel not so good as well. Not as bad as you, it's for more like headache, tired, a bit of coughing as well. I changed my wife's snow tires today. I took the snow tires off her car, and man, I was so gassed afterwards. I took an hour and a half nap because I'm like, oh, we got to record the pod. I got to be pretty good, and glad we're here. We should get started, right? There's a lot of stuff going on.
We're going to talk about stuff that's going to make people not want to move to the island, which is fine with me. It just keeps less people away.
There was an earthquake last week on Friday. Did you feel it?
I didn't feel it. I was in the office here. I was working. I got a text from my wife saying, did you feel the earthquake? I'm like, what are you talking about? And then, yeah, all the family started messaging, and yeah, there was an earthquake that the family did feel.
Yeah. So it was a 4.7 on the Richter scale earthquake that was felt in Vancouver as well as on the coast. So it originated off the Sunshine Coast, northeast of Seashelt. So personally, I didn't feel it either. I was in South Surrey having a lunch, but my wife, we're in North Surrey. She felt it, and it was like this. If you guys see this, it was like, she said she thought it was like a truck driving through our back alley and shaking. And everything that you were taught when you're in school, you go under your table, all that stuff. She didn't do anything. She just that kind of what's happening.
It's such a minor amount. I remember feeling one, I think it was about 5 years ago. And you just don't know. I did. When was it? There was a really big one. It was in I think like 2012. I was up in Prince Rupert. It was when like a tsunami hit in Japan and everything. And it was massive. Like we felt it. We all went. We got warnings that tsunami was coming. They were told us to leave the bar. We had already all had a few too many drinks. So we're like, yeah, we're going to stay. A tsunami wave comes. We'll take it.
Wow. Where were you at the time? Were you in like Tofino or something? Like,
no, Prince Rupert. I was diving for work back then.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that's one of those scary things of everyone thinks about, oh, when I retire, I want to move to Hawaii and all that stuff. I love Hawaii too, but that thought of something like, wow, you are exposed in the middle of the Pacific, and if something happens, you can meet your maker pretty soon.
That's everyone talks about. You probably hear it in Vancouver and everything there, Alex. Everyone talks about Vancouver Island. The big one's coming, the massive earthquake. People don't move here because they're scared of the earthquake and everything. I've been hearing it for my 34 years of life. It's where I live, honestly. Obviously, if you're like on the water, hey, different story. And again, we're on the inside. If you're on the other side, like Tofino, hey, tsunami may be going to come that way. But where we are, like, I just don't know. I don't know what would happen if the massive earthquake came.
Yeah, and you don't live life like in fear of that all the time. So if it happens, if our time is up, our time is up. Of course, you got to be safe and not be reckless with your life and everything like that. But apparently, there was another earthquake after as well too over the weekend. It was a 5.2 earthquake off of Port Alice, which is northwest of Vancouver Island. That's the opposite end, right, of where you are.
Yeah, for just further north.
Yeah, and you didn't feel it at all?
Not at all.
Wow, okay. Like they said, the big one's going to happen, but it's actually good that we're having more smaller ones. So the chances
Yeah, exactly.
of a
That's
big one, I don't know about the whole, what was it, the plate tectonics things? Like what's that? What's the science
tectonic
called?
plates, or
Yeah,
the tectonic plates or whatever. And
yeah,
yeah, they
yeah. The
want, they
geo
need to
stuff.
push relieving it.
Yeah. So, but thankfully, no damage, no injuries or fatalities or casualties and stuff. But going back east, there was a big snowstorm in Ontario last week. I heard there was what?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, how many inches of it was like? Was it like 2 feet of snow
I
or
mean,
something like
yeah, I
that?
mean, yeah, it was big. I've seen other photos of like in the past, but it was still like, again, every place is just that Ontario's used to snow, just not that much snow. And they were backlogged. A lot of stuff happened around the city, crashes and everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, and there was a report that 34 people were treated for heart attacks at Newmarket Hospital after shoveling snow. So we hear this from every year that not everyone can afford to pay for shoveling or snow removal, so we do it ourselves. And you and I'd like to consider ourselves relatively fit. I work out and all that stuff. But shoveling snow is a strenuous activity. So if we're talking like people who are older, maybe they're seniors, 60, 70, can't afford it, but they just do it themselves, heart attacks can happen, right? Like you can
Yep.
hear instances because it is a very strenuous activity and it just happens to be people who don't normally exercise or subject to this kind of strenuous thing. So be safe out there when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one, we already had talked about the other flight in Toronto that obviously we know that crashed and flipped over with Delta. I don't know. We talked about, is this just a weird time that all these flight things are coming? But there was a Southwest flight, had a near miss incident at the Chicago midway when a FlexJet also crossed a runway. And from what I saw, the one plane was landing, saw that other plane was coming and was able to take off in time. And it was like, oh, if that wouldn't have happened, like if they wouldn't have taken off, both planes probably blow up. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, there'd be hundreds of more fatalities there. I'm sure the video has made the rounds in social media, but yeah, it was good on those pilots to see, oh, we're going to hit them. I better take off again. And I didn't see what happened afterwards. I'm sure they just lifted off and then just rounded around to come back down. But man, this is
Like,
what
is someone
happened.
losing their job? Like, is someone losing their job? Like, how are people not communicating?
I don't know, man. We've heard that Trump has cut funding for the FAA, and maybe this is the result of it. There's not enough people in the air traffic control, or just what is going on. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that I always sometimes wonder, is there too many people? Have some things have too much people? That was my thought. Is like, hey, is there too much people trying to communicate everything going on? But I think they have to have one air traffic controller for each plane, like when they're going, because they usually have one person that's mapping the planes out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems crazy that it's all these different airplane incidents are happening.
Yeah, and especially we're 2025, we have so much technology. We haven't
Yeah.
heard that much about all this stuff until maybe the last couple of years. More and more things happen. I'm like, did technology get worse? No. And it's all about funding and manpower and all that stuff. Man, this is not to scare people from flying, but
Going on I might be going on a flight, so I don't know if I'm not going to talk about it too much.
Exactly. So we try to avoid talking about politics, but politics is rearing its ugly head, or not ugly head, but it's coming up now. More things have come up about the liberal leader candidate, Ruby Dalla. She got disqualified from running. And apparently CBC reported some financial irregularities in her campaign. And she
Did they
popped,
like? I didn't
yeah.
see, like. Did they like? Hell, I didn't dive into it all that much. I haven't really looked into liberals all that. Did they dive in like specifically what they were looking at?
Yeah, apparently I read a little bit about it and they said something about receiving donations from certain people. It wasn't kosher kind of thing, even though like she was on X trying to defend herself. It was a simple misunderstanding and all that stuff. She's filed an appeal, but she's basically saying like the game is rigged. The liberals obviously want either Carney or Freeland to win,
Yeah,
and they just maybe she was a disruptor and they just fight.
like she went up the polls pretty quickly from what she was doing.
Yeah, exactly. She has filed an appeal, but in the meantime, she is not in the running. Did you watch the liberal leadership debate at all a few days ago?
No, I don't. It's just not something that I haven't looked at it at all.
Hey, I agree with you too, because I got better things to do with my time. So it was between four people: Mark Carney, Christopher Freeland. We have Karina Gold, also a member of parliament, and Frank Bayless, who is a businessman and former MP. I learned something new. I didn't know that as a former MP, you can put your hat in the ring to run for leadership. Like, you quit. Like, he was a member of parliament, but he did not seek re-election in 2019 or 2020, something like that. He went back to his business life, and now he threw in his hat in his ring to get back into. I didn't know that you're able to do that. Don't you need to
Yeah,
be an
I mean,
active member of parliament to run
well,
for
I
a
mean,
leader?
we already know from Mark Carney, he's not doesn't have a riding, doesn't have anything.
He
So there's
never even
really,
got voted in.
yeah, it is there. It seems to be whatever you want to do. You tried to do it, we probably would say, oh no, you're not allowed to do it. But it seems to be they get to make their own rules that way. Where I thought it had to be, you had to either already be an MP of a riding and then be able to go and vote. But I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, there it is. But the polls do show that Carney is in the lead with Freeland second. So,
Yeah, I would put pretty big money on it that Carney's winning. I
uh,
would I'd put that as a pretty big gamble.
has there been any situation like this in the past where the party leader wins who becomes like who never got elected and then event becomes the prime minister? Has that happened in the past?
Don't know. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
dig into for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the viewers or anything. Was it Paul Martin? But no, but he was a member of parliament. But yeah, I got to look into that. So we'll talk about that next time. Other things in politics is the Ontario election happened today. So we're recording on a Thursday. I guess they've called it that Doug Ford and his progressive conservatives reelected for a third consecutive term. So I'm not too familiar with Ontario politics and Doug Ford and all that stuff, but yeah, he's back in
Yeah.
power for another
I
4
don't think
years.
there's anyone else there, but it's going again. It's just, so much politics going on. Then we got the York University suspends admissions to 18 programs amid funding crises, signaling the start of a higher end collapse. Now, I was actually talking to my wife about this. In our town, like we have a small college and everything, and they're building like a new spot for dorms. We've never had dorms before. And I was like, I wonder how that's going to do. And she said, what do you mean? I'm like, a lot of the stuff like we're not bringing in as many people now. I wonder if they're actually going to be able to put the school. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, universities and colleges are like suffering. And I'm like, they're not suffering, but they took advantage of programs and now aren't having the same amount of funding.
Yeah, exactly. They basically, yeah, take advantage of the whole immigration, like the loose rules. And hey, they were able to charge what, four times tuition
Oh,
what a local person would charge. So as a university, geez, they'll admit as many foreign students as they can because it's a cash cow for them. It's
and as landlords too in those areas, they didn't care because they're like, oh, you're immigration, you're a university student. Oh, it's 1,000 more than someone else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they have no choice. So, of those, probably it's a symptom of other schools. We've been hearing about these other colleges, especially the private colleges that are suffering. So, for this one in York University, 18 programs were suspended, including gender studies, indigenous studies, environmental biology. Of course, it's triggered by the Fed cutting international student visas by 10%. So, it's down to 437,000 permits from 485,000. So we have these other smaller colleges like Centennial College, Sheridan Colleges also hit 40 to 50 programs, and other like over 1,000 Ontario college programs projected to shutter, to just cease to
Yeah,
exist.
Ontario's pretty big. Like it's out east is probably BC. We have a lot of international students, but other than that, like it's out east. Most of them either go to Ontario or honestly Nova Scotia. That's where a lot of international students go to, and it's going to be it's going to be interesting.
That's a symptom of we knew it was going to happen. Crocodile tears. I don't feel sorry for them because they took advantage and of
Yeah,
a broken system that we've had for a long time.
yeah, exactly. I just hope they don't. I just hope they don't ruin it for the other students like us, the Canadians that are wanting to now go get students. Are they now going to jack the prices up? Oh, we're not getting funding from here. We're going to go take it from somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah. And when I went to university 25 years ago, my tuition as a local was 2,500, and even with books and
For
everything, it's 3,000 a year. I'm like,
yeah,
now, how much is it? Is it like 10,000 a year now? Probably.
yeah.
Like
I don't
in a
know. It's
university.
Yeah, I only did diploma type of things, and mine were all very expensive courses. They were all like short and expensive. But I think my wife's like master's, it was like $13,000 a year. I think when she did hers, just for
Yeah.
her tuition.
Yeah. And she's a local. If she was a like foreign student out of country, it would be four times that. That'd be like 50,000, right?
That's so crazy.
And
Like, and I don't
yeah.
really understand. How can, to me it doesn't really make sense. Like, how can they charge them more? Okay, like, they're, for one, they're bringing funding into Canada, and it's, hey, like, you do have to pay more, but it's, don't allow them to take over all the seats. Say, hey, they get 30% of the seating, the locals get 60%, 70% of them. And it was a weird system that I'm glad, like you said, that it's not going to be here.
Yeah. From a local perspective, of course, they charge four times more because you're taking a spot away from a local. But we know the universities in the back, they're like, how can we increase the percentage to more foreign? Because we get four times the income. This is
Oh,
a
I
high
mean, think of,
income opportunity for us. So
that's, I think, like the ads supposedly in like those, like those towns and everything like that. It's just crazy. The universities just goes nuts for ads trying to get people to come.
yeah, exactly. So we move on. Other things like other reports came out that Canadian retail sales, it jumped 2.5% month over month in December. Now it beat expectations at which was expected at 1.6%. So this is the strongest gain since mid 2022. Now I think largely of this jump was the GST holiday, right? Like
Well, that's what I was going to say. People like it, and it's Christmas again, and I think people felt in a better place this year than the following year. That they were like, okay, hey, I can actually go buy my kid this toy. I can. There was more. It wasn't as fearful at that time. Come January, then it's holy shit, we're in a completely different picture with all the tariff stuff.
yeah,
But I do think people are starting to feel more comfortable, and they were spending more money.
I feel so too. Rates started dropping as of, I
Yep.
believe, June, July last year. And we look at those stats about the percentage of the housing costs in terms of total household budget has reduced from 40% now down to last report was like 11%. Maybe that's a symptom like it's still not as good as before, but it's a lot better. That's a symptom of that hope around the corner that we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, this report also strengthens the case for a Bank of Canada rate hold in March, especially with the potential trade war looming. But a lot of economists say that even though they would hold in March, that it won't be for long because we'll talk about it later. But even Tiff Macklem would say don't expect rates to drop like emergency. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it really just, it's gonna depend on, and I know we have our orders a little bit messed up here, Alex. But why don't we just, yeah, why don't we jump into that?
Yeah.
Of what Tiff Macklem is saying is that the Canadian economy, it will not be able to bounce back from a longer trade war with the United States,
Mm.
as the impact from the trade disruptions will be structural in nature. And
Mm.
what he's meaning is, like, if that happens, like, this is going to change the course of the future. It's going to change the course of our economy and everything. And it's not going to be something that can just be like, oh, it's just a temporary thing. It's going to be set in stone. And
Mm.
that's where there's a lot of things that could affect here. Now, they do have rates to be able to control some of it. But if we start implementing tariffs on the US and everything, that's when inflation is going to come in, because when we put tariffs on them, that's when we start paying for the higher goods. And so,
Yeah.
like, it is a freaking, I feel like we're just bouncing balls back and forth right now of what's going to happen, what's it going to look like.
Yeah, especially with when we have hyperinflation, then Bank of Canada is stuck in a hard place. They can't drop rates as much because they don't want to stoke it even more. Now, Tiff Macklem, he said, in the pandemic, we had a steep recession followed by a rapid recovery as the economy reopened. Now, this time, if tariffs are long lasting and broad based, there won't be a bounce back. Yeah, like you said, it's not going to be one of those slingshot recovery. It's just going to be entrenched that it might be a lost
Yeah.
decade for us.
Yeah, and that's where, like, he's talked about, hey, like, they have the ability to lower the rates, and they may have to do it for specific reasons. For one, we need people to spend money on businesses. Our business is going to leave Canada. Now, the issue and the thing that we had obviously in COVID was inflation spike.
Mm-hmm.
Rates were so damn low, but there was a lot of stuff going on that added to that. We had the supply chain issues, we had oil prices, And so that increased the goods of everything. With this, that isn't going to happen in the same way. Now, if we add the tariffs on the US, we are going to start getting some inflation from there. Now, to me, what I believe that needs to happen is the government needs to put a thing out saying, hey, if you were going to reduce rates because we need to stimulate the economy, you cannot increase your prices just because you believe that you think you should make more money. If you can actually prove that, hey, your expenses have gone up 15%, hey, of course you may have to increase the cost of something. But we know during COVID, there was businesses that did not have any cost increase, but they were like, hey, I see Alex, he's increasing his prices because maybe your business was impacted. I'm going to do it because everyone else is paying that price.
Oh
And,
yeah. The food
and
industry
that,
is like Loblaws and Sobeys
oh,
and all that. The groceries, like they went up. It used to be like you can get a loaf of bread for $1.75. Now it's $4 for a loaf of bread.
oh, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
where some of that stuff to do was for sure due to shipping cost, and some of it wasn't. And that's where I think the government would need to set something up in place to be able to stop that stuff of, hey, we're going to drop rates because we need to stimulate the economy. But of course, businesses are going to take advantage of it if they find a way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. We're stuck in a rock and a hard place. So some things that are, we'll see how it goes. So in another news, we're all talking about like Canada as a country, we have a lot of debt. And you heard my feelings about last week when they announced a bullet train from Toronto to Quebec City. I'm not poo-pooing the thought, but it's just the timing of it. Here's another thing that gets my blood boiling is that we're sending $5 billion to Ukraine for their foreign aid.
Does not make sense.
Yeah.
Does not make sense.
While the entire EU, which comprises of 27 countries, is pledging only $3.5 billion. Now, Canada, as our sole country, is contributing way more than 27 countries combined. And why is that? Like, why are we doing this, especially when we're dealing with a potential tariff war? Like, the government needs to wake up.
Yeah. And again, we talked about this before, Alex and I, we want to make sure people have food, water, and shelter in countries that are getting devastated by war that they obviously didn't want and everything. Like, we don't want that, but we've been sending billions to them. And again, nothing is changing. They're still doing the same stuff right now. And what Trump right now and Putin, they're getting together. And I think Trump is saying that he thinks that they're now is upset saying that Ukraine started the war. And it's just, what the hell is going on?
Oh man, reminds me of hearing about like North Korea and all these dictatorships. And it's so much propaganda that's going on that they're all in denial. No this, no that. And they're just brainwashing the public to fit whatever their narratives. Speaking of Donald Trump, he actually confirmed that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico will proceed on March 4th. Now, there was a period yesterday where they was supposed to delay it to April the 2nd. And then today they're like, no, it's going to be March the 4th. So it's going to be 25% tariffs on Canada. And then on April the 2nd, reciprocal tariffs will remain in effect. And then there's going to be a 10% tariff on Canadian oil and electricity. And I believe that 10% tariff on China as well. So there's going to be additional levies on steel and aluminum. That'll start March the 12th. If you add everything up, this is going to sink us into recession, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and it's comical. Trump, yeah, it's going to be March 4th. No, we'll wait April 2nd. No, it's going to be March 4th again. He's pretty much playing Canada. He's being a bully. He's at the negotiation table, and he's pretty much saying, you have no power here.
Yeah. Speaking of what we talked about, like as Canada, it's shined a light on us where why are we just trading north-south and not east to west? Now, the Premier of Saskatchewan, thank goodness, he said this immediately. He said, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, he said, effective immediately, any pipeline permits going east or west or south going through Saskatchewan will be automatically pre-approved. And he encourages all provinces and the federal government to do the same. So let's lift the red tape. Let's do some interprovincial trading so that there's no tariffs between provinces, right? Because right now it's ridiculous.
Oh, there should be no tariffs. It's cheaper for someone to go and buy, say, alcohol down in the US because you may not have to pay this. The taxes might be less. than if you buy it in Alberta and you bring it to BC, you're meant to pay taxes on it. It's just messed up.
Yeah, it is. It is. We got to talk about mortgages because this is the Canadian Mortgage Show, right? The big mortgage renewal battle has commenced. The big blue bank RBC, who has the #1 market share of mortgages in Canada, they launched a renewal app.
I'm surprised they didn't have this already. I mean, like that it honestly surprised me they didn't already have something like this, and maybe they've had it for a bit and just been trying to make sure it's ready to go.
Yeah.
But a lot of them have like specific renewal things, and I don't think it's going to be game changing having like an app for it, but obviously it does give the consumer more control, and it's a cheaper cost for the bank. Alex, I have an RBC mortgage. You're not going to call me, the RBC specialist. You're going to look at your app and, hey, I'm not going to offer you the best rate at first.
Yeah.
I might offer you something that might look okay. And if you don't go look anywhere else, you might just click on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's very smart on their move because especially we're in the age of technology and there's apps for everything. Gone are those days of lenders used to not caring about renewals and then they give you the terrible rate. Now they're trying to pay more attention, especially with purchase and sale, like the transactions down. They are working really hard on retaining mortgages and not losing.
RBC's always been very good. Like they've probably had one of the best retention teams on mortgages renewals, actually, other lenders.
Yeah.
It sucks for us, just so people know, as a mortgage broker, when let's say we're doing your mortgage, everything is good. RBC just did not offer you anything good. My and Alex's job is always to try and get you exactly what you want. Do you need a new lender? Do you need new options? It might be better just to stay, but usually they don't offer a good rate. So it's like, hey, we're going to bring you over here. RBC will wait to the day until you get what's called the discharge letter that we get to be able to go and get you that new mortgage. They'll then call you and say, hey, you know what? We actually can offer you that lower rate that you wanted.
That's what I hate about some business sometimes is that they won't get you the best deal up front, but they'll make you do all the work. And it's almost like when you're buying a car and you're negotiating. I hate haggling. I'm just speaking of this experience that we just had. And you have to go through the song and dance. You almost have to make it look like you really are going to leave, right? And you get up and leave the dealership, or in this case, make it look like you are going to take your mortgage somewhere else. Then they'll give you the best deal. I'm like, why didn't you give me this best deal? Because they didn't have to, right? Only when they'll even delay the discharge.
They'll delay the discharge as long as they can. I think they have to give it like within at least 10 business days, but they'll push it to day 10. If you want it to close within 5 days, they'll push it till day 10. And they're pretty aggressive. And that's where, again, it's great for consumers. Like it's a great win that way. It's nice to see, hey, let's see like people actually getting offered something good. Just make sure you get a second opinion, people.
Exactly.
Don't just look at your app and be like, oh, I got a 4.5. This is great.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere else actually is better.
It is convenient, but folks, still shop around. Look around for the best deal, and then talk to a broker for a second opinion.
Yeah, that's why I write letters for people all the time, even when I'm not doing their mortgage. I'd say, hey, you have that. You want to stick with RBC? Hey, let's see if we can get them to go lower for you. I'll help you do that legwork instead of you having to go get all that stuff. I write a personal letter, and then they're good to go.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we still got some time. We should keep motoring on. This is a very depressing stat that Remax put out. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, this one is the average age of a first-time home buyer in Canada is now 36 years old, which is, it's pretty crazy. And it also pushes, meaning that people also don't have kids till later. Like we're worried about people having kids, and it's because they can't buy a house now, mainly due to many needing to save anywhere from 5 to 10 years to afford a reasonable down payment. 5% in many of these cases.
Exactly. And I can speak from my experience, especially in the Lower Mainland. It's the most expensive in Canada. I would say 75% of my first-time buyers receive some sort of help from family. Like, because no 25 or 30-year-old can save up $100,000 for a 20% deposit on a $500,000 shoebox in the sky, right? Parents know that they're going to have to gift their kids a money like early inheritance or that generational wealth early before they pass to help the kids get in,
Oh,
especially in the Lower Mainland
I can
and the GTA.
tell you the best way to do it because I did it at 21. There is a way to do it, but you got to go work away. And you just have to live on ramen noodles.
Yeah, yeah. Some do it, but some don't. And
And that's where I
yeah,
have, it's very hard to buy. And I fully feel for people. Like it is, like you said, you bought your first place, Alex, in 2004 for 255,000.
yep.
I bought my first place in 2010 for 210,000. And it's not fair for what people have to buy now. But I do talk to people that are just, they're not doing anything to try and save for it. They're
Yeah.
just putting part of woe is me. I can't make this happen. It's so hard. And you're not saving any money. You're not even trying to save money.
Yeah. I think this internet generation of driving the nice cars or the truck, you live at home, but you have $120,000 truck. That's how much is it costing you? $2,000 a month? Oh,
It's crazy.
yeah.
I mean, they can get approved for that. The shitty thing is the way that like loans are for cars is you can get approved for 120,000. Where it's like it makes it harder to get approved for a freaking house.
Exactly.
Like it's
Same thing like that. And credit cards is they need to like, especially our mortgage industry, we're heavily regulated. The auto industry and credit cards are not regulated. It's the Wild West. And you told the story where you had a friend or a client that was only making what 60, 70,000 a year, bought $120,000 truck, and then later he soon regretted it, right?
as you say, hey, I have income and I got a pulse and you got a credit score, you're good to go. And you can go to places that even if you have no credit score, they'll still give it to you.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. And they'll just keep financing it because the companies know, like, all right, Alex bought it for 120. We financed the shit out of him. He now sold it because he can't make these payments. We're going to get the next person. They're going to finance the shit out of it. And so like they can finance it up to 210%. And that's not how it works for a house.
Yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, like even when we bought our first place, we bought a pre-sale in Burnaby. It was a one bed and den in 2004. It completed in 2005. I guess we weren't right there in the beginning of their pre-sale phase, but we got in later. Yeah, it was 255. And at the time, we thought it was expensive, 255, because our friends bought her
255 for a condo, like that's pretty expensive.
Yeah. At the time, like my wife's friend bought her condo for 180. And at the time she bought hers, she thought it was expensive because her friends were for 150. So it was all relative. For those of you listening, oh my goodness. And this is a one bed and den. It was 855 square feet in Brentwood, heart of Brentwood. Back 20 years ago, Brentwood is what it is today. It was still redeveloping and all that stuff. So we were in our mid 20s. I was 24, 25. My wife was a year younger than me. And we needed help from my parents for the 5% down. I didn't have money, but I think my parents wanted to buy us out. They wanted me to get out of the house. So they fronted the 5%, and they even helped co-sign the mortgage for me and my wife. So I'm like,
did they have any benefits for you, Alex? Like from the government, did you get anything? Like, did you get GST off anything? Was there any incentives back then when you bought?
I think at the time we didn't have any of those. I think we didn't have those incentives. Like it came in later. And right now we have this property transfer tax exemption for those in BC for first time buyers. At the time we first bought, we didn't have it. And who I was dealing with at the time at the bank didn't tell us about the closing costs. So I had to borrow money from my parents. So folks, it's important that you talk to a reputable broker to outline all the costs involved. It's not just down payment. It's other upfront costs, appraisal, closing costs, home inspection, all legal those things. We were like, we have to pay what? I'm like, I don't have that. Down payment. Exactly. So even then we were struggling, but we made it work. But just imagine today, that same condo, I just looked up the BC assessment on it. That same condo is worth $725. Jesus. Holy crap. No wonder first-time buyers are 36. That's the average. So that means there are some first-time buyers that are in their 40s and others are in the 30s, which brings us to 36.
I saw that the main age group that are actually buying and selling right now in Canada is 52. That is the main age group that is buying and selling right now. And that is honestly because it's people either downsizing most likely or moving across the like different provinces.
Or
that's where most
or in a case 52 is probably that age where parents pass and they have an inheritance, so they have some choices they can make, upsizing, downsizing. But yeah, man, that's sad. Like the same condo at 725, no wonder. Like, geez, even if at 5% down, it's not 5, 7% is like, what's that number? 35, 40,000. How long will it take for you to save $40,000?
Let's say, hey, you're at 70, let's say you're at 70,000 a year in income. You got to pay taxes on that. So your actual net income, let's say, is actually 50,000. And then you're only spending, let's say, 40,000. You can save 10. Let's say you can't. You can only save 5,000. It's like 500 divided by. It's taken 7 years at minimum if all you're saving is 5,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly. This kind of goes to show that wages have not kept up with home prices over the last 20 years. And then it's no wonder why people are delaying until their mid 30s, unless they're well into their careers already and they're making decent money. And like you said, why most couples are delaying having kids till mid to late 30s and even into their 40s now.
That's what I mean. If I went back, my job I had when I was 20 as a commercial diver, my income would be more or less the same today. I'd made the same amount of money back in 2010 as I could make now as a commercial diver.
Yeah.
The one nice thing, like there was benefits that I think the government should potentially bring back in, especially on the GST part, is I got a GST, I got the land transfer tax, and I got GST. And so I was able to put an extra amount of money into my RSP, borrow from that, and then I got $10,000 back after I bought, which I then used to go and add to my RSP to top it up even more.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Remax, they just did a rebrand, right? Does it look like Pepsi?
Oh God, it's funny. I've seen a lot of other, mostly EXP agents throw some shade out there saying, "Hey, look at Remax's new branding. Is it familiar?" And then they put like a Pepsi can up to it. And it's pretty weird. Honestly, I didn't mind I always liked the balloon thing. It's weird.
Yeah, I've always liked it. Sometimes companies go through rebrands and it doesn't look as good as the previous branding. And it's, this kind of doesn't look as good. Or especially sports teams when they change their logo just because they want to make more money on new merchandise. And people are like, "Oh man, this is crap," or all that.
No, and you only get the diehard people that buy it because they're like, "I got to have every piece of gear," where other people are like, "I'm not buying that thing."
Yeah, exactly. Hey, do you remember the days? I'm dating myself. Do you remember the days where they do the blind taste test for Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Coke? Did you go through that when you were a kid?
Nope.
Okay, so I'm dating myself. I think this is back in the 90s where they're doing the blind taste test for Coke or Pepsi. And honestly, I'm not a soft drink drinker, so I actually couldn't tell the difference. But my wife could. She says that Coke is a little bit sweeter than Pepsi. And
I think I could tell the difference from Coke and Pepsi. That'd be fun. I don't actually know, but I feel like I could. I don't like Pepsi really. I like Coke.
Oh, okay. I'm not much of a soft drink person because I don't really like the fizz too much.
I like rum and Coke.
Oh yeah, unless it's gin and tonic, then I can have those all day. But yeah, I think that puts a wrap to this episode. Any closing thoughts, Alex?
No, I think it was a good one here today, just talking about all this stuff. And hopefully we get some more news here coming up. Obviously, Bank of Canada, March 12th. If they are going to cut, are they going to hold? What's going to happen with fixed rate mortgages here? We just got to keep watching the data as it come.
Yeah.
I keep getting people saying, "Hey, what's going to happen?" We don't know yet. There's no data telling us one thing for sure.
On a personal note, I just want to tell you me and my wife's dating anniversary is tomorrow, and it'll be 30 years that we're together.
Holy smoke. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, honey, happy anniversary. We actually celebrate our dating anniversary more than our wedding anniversary. Like our wedding anniversary is later this year in September, and we'll be 20 years married, but 30 years together. But yeah, so we're well past that time where we're alive longer together than we were separately. Honey, I love you. And by the time this pod goes live, I had a special present for you. I hope you like it.
I hope you guys have a great time there, Alex.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we're actually going for a dinner tomorrow to Abbotsford, a little dome dinner kind of thing. Looking forward to that. If I'm not feeling 100%, I'm going to pop some meds. I'll feel fine. I'll do well anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, both of us, we made it through this episode. We were playing injured, but thanks for listening through this, and we got through this. On behalf of my co-host, Alex Shanks, I'm Alex Pang. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Talk to you later.
Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. You can even send us an email because we want to know what you guys want to hear about. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.